How do you build a community to grow your startup? How do you link your passion, vision for doing good with growing a business? This is a question that many founders ask themselves. Well, you in luck today because we've got Patrick Huang from Meet Freed, and this is a question that they are answering and would love to share their insights with you today. Patrick is one of the TechRound UK BAME 50 under 50 in 2021, and he has over 16 years of experience in marketing, strategy, and operation as a former management consultant for IBM. And in fact, he's also done quite a lot, especially when it comes to taking on leadership roles with early stage startups. So that's quite a lot of knowledge, and I'm really excited about bringing all of this and having this conversation with Patrick live with you today. Welcome to the Mary Poppins of Startups live show. I'm Naili Makangu, your host for today from Athena Leaders, an organization that is passionate about helping startups dream, build, play, whilst leaving behind the legacy of a happy and productive workplace playground. For anyone new to the show, here's a reminder of 3 rules. The first one, as much as I enjoy having the conversation with Patrick, please don't be left out. If you have any question, any thoughts that's coming into your mind, do send us your comments. We will answer them live, or we will chase you afterwards and to share with you anything else that you want to find out about what we are discussing today. Secondly, if you know any amazing startup founder out there, regardless of the stages where they are at, or anyone within the startups ecosystem that would like to come and share their knowledge to help us grow, then please get them to reach out to me. Number 3, the most important one, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Patrick, I'm really excited to talk to you about Meet Freed. And of course, if you remember correctly, when we started discussing, my main question was like, ooh, should I completely give up on meat to enjoy what you are bringing out there with Meet Freed?
Yes, hi, Nelly. Thank you for that. We are focused and designed in a way to be inclusive of everyone. Anyone who is just starting or curious to start on a plant-based journey, to people who are vegans or have been vegans or vegetarians for many years. Right? So that focus was intentional. We recognize that the vast majority of the world still eat meat. I think the last stat I saw was about 86 to 90% of people in the world still consume meat in some way. So we kind of recognize that fact. We know that if we wanted to make a real impact, then we needed to focus on people then who still eat meat.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is one of the things I also like about Meat Freed when I was researching it for the show, is that, as you've said before, there's a lot of emphasis that goes from one extreme to the other. Yet when it comes to the journey, it feels a little bit cloudy in terms of getting there. So how is Meat Freed helping people on their transition journey to a state where they're eating less meat or not eating meat at all?
Sure. So our vision is really to kind of like bring everyone on board to this plant-based journey. We are targeting though the 16 to 24s. So we have also kind of like intentionally focused on this age group because we recognize that people within this age group, if they were to start on their plant-based journey and to adopt more plant-based in their diet, then the impact on the environment, on their like individual health, on animal welfare, right, that can then last not only for their lifetimes, but also their families and their peers and so on, right? So to kind of going back to your question now in terms of what we're doing to kind of encourage that. So then for this group in particular, they have kind of like 2 main challenges that we have heard when speaking to our members. So the first one is that so for someone who currently eat meat, currently eats meat, but when it wants to reduce their meat consumption, they have kind of like very limited to almost like no options to associate themselves with something that is not very kind of like hardcore vegan and has that kind of very strong messaging, or just there are kind of like basically brands and like companies that have their own like social media accounts that people could join, right? But it is nothing kind of like in between, right? And then the other challenge is that 62 to 24 is, they're at that stage where they're defining their own voice, right? They're defining, what they believe in, what they value, and they want to share that. But given that they're usually still students, it's quite hard for them to really kind of like amplify their own influence and their own voice, right? So kind of going back to the first point, how we are addressing that is by basically having Meat Freed as a movement. And I'm using the word movement because that's also what people have been sharing with us. That that it's something that people can kind of like attach to themselves, can associate their aspiration to want to eat less meat because they recognize the impact that meat has. But they either don't want to be vegan now, or they don't know enough, right? So then they are just kind of starting on that journey, and then they want to associate themselves with something that aligns with their values, and of course then connect with others like them, right? So that's kind of addressing the second challenge for people in this age group, where we basically kind of co-create ways for them to connect with others like them. That would then serve as a way to kind of amplify their voice and their influence.
I love that it's the emphasis on movement, and as you said, it's kind of a movement that's very inclusive, regardless of where you are on your journey. Now, another thing that you just said as well is about this co-creating this movement, this community. So, how did you start? Obviously, once you already had the idea of Meat Freed, what you were going to do. But then how do you go from that to really starting to go into the community and co-creating the community with the target market that you've identified?
Right. Yeah. So we are fortunate in that Meat Freed was kind of born out of Launchpad. So Launchpad is a venture studio program based out of Falmouth Uni here in Cornwall. So because of our association with the uni, we were then able to basically have direct access to our like future members and users. So we really just went out there and spoke to them. Initially it was kind of like these what we call, I guess, like guerrilla marketing tactics to we had this like spinner wheel where people can like spin the wheel and then they can win plant-based food or snacks or like vouchers, right? So that's how we first started, and that was really just a way for us to just start a conversation, right? We initially we kind of establish a small focus group, basically, just to kind of confirm that that people within this age group had this like sentiment, and then when we kind of got that initial validation, that we now started to engage with more students, and we were using this like spinner wheel as just a way to now start a conversation, because people would see the spinner wheel, they will want to spin it basically, and then as they do that, then they register for Meat Freed, and then at the point it's just a conversation, right, to just like understand where they are in their plant-based journey. What options have they considered to associate themselves with? And we had probably like a 90% conversion of everyone who came up or who approached us to actually like register. So I think that really demonstrated the like initial interest for Meat Freed.
Yeah. Wow, 90% conversion, that's pretty high. And again, one of the things that I quite like was the spinning the wheel technique. In fact, this is one of the things that a lot of startups out there, especially those who are really early stage and try to understand a bit more their market, going through the product discovery stage, they struggle to come up with very simple ideas like spin the wheels. If you already have identified your customer, and especially if it's an area where you can have lots of them in mass, then what can you do that sounds very simple, but yet very effective, as you can see, to kind of get their interest to come and speak to you. So I'm gonna keep the spin the wheel in mind for one of my tricks whenever I do product discovery or customer discovery for clients.
Mhm.
One thing, again, this is just curiosity, really. Whenever people talk about building a community, a lot of people associate that with having a Facebook group or a WhatsApp group and things like that. Is this something that you've also thought about, or is it something that is part of in the back of your mind, or maybe something that you've discarded completely?
Yeah. So I guess our model for Meet Freed will essentially become a new way for businesses, brands, and so on to engage with our membership. So something that is, much more local. Not necessarily that we are only focused on like local, but in terms of how people in general and how 16 to 24 year olds kind of want to relate, right? So they have their daily life, their real life that they live in, like everyone lives. They may have a favorite band that's playing in Manchester or in Berlin, and that's great, and that's part of their kind of like digital life, perhaps. But in their real life, they're trying to find ways to like connect, right? So I guess I'm saying all this because I guess our digital marketing strategy exists in terms of we still use the traditional kind of like social media channels, but how we're kind of like tracking and engaging our members is by doing things that are in their real life. So as an example, we have kind of teamed up with the sustainability department at Falmouth Uni. There is a film screening going on. It's this like plant-based documentary that we are supporting and promoting. So that's something that people can like register, attend in person, meet others like them in person, and kind of like have that actual conversation that you can't really have when you're just on social.
So you're taking the hybrid approach and bringing it to the way the Meet Freed community is going to not just learn from an individual, but also grow and connect with others.
Yeah. So I think that this is also about, I guess, how you would perhaps like truly define a community, right? So, or let's say that one metric or one way that would define a community is around engagement, right? So there are different ways then to measure engagement, and engagement doesn't have to be in person, right? So there are like digital communities that still engage with each other, but there's nothing really that will replace like in-person engagement, right? And I guess like for us, because our entire I guess like business is basically kind of like around food, there's only so much that you can engage with food until you can really engage it and then actually eat it, right? Because you can't.
It's all about eating.
You can't eat food when you like see it on Instagram. I mean, it's great and it like looks great, but your experience with it only get you so far, right? So then when kind of like think about engagement, right? So engagement is can be kind of measured when you connect with people in real life, and that's what we're trying to focus on.
Yeah. You mentioned partners there and other businesses that are also part of the community or that will be supporting the community. How have you found the experience of engaging with the businesses to join the movement?
Yeah, businesses are or so I guess the two main segments of businesses that we engage with are local, like local businesses. For now, kind of focusing on restaurants because they are the ones that provide meals to customers. And then the second are kind of like food manufacturers or basically companies that provide plant-based ingredients, right? So for the local restaurants and that kind of business segment, we have found them to be quite engaging. I think there's kind of two things there. There's either their own association with plant-based, whether they are vegetarian or vegan, and also it's a very I guess like a commercial opportunity for them, right? They also see that, or let's say like this. The vast majority of our business partners are restaurants. A lot of them have kind of joined in our kind of meat-free partner network, and most of them have done that because consumers want more plant-based options, right? So we're not coming at them with a message that doesn't really resonate with them. They believe it because they know that it is good for the environment and health and so on. But then they also know that customers have been wanting it, so then they need to put it on their menu, and then now they also kind of see us as a way to showcase them, right? So I guess this also applies also for the plant-based brands who are kind of like challenging the $1 trillion global meat market, which is huge, and they are trying to kind of get at them by providing something that is just as tasty but healthier and better for the environment.
Yeah, that's true. And in fact, just now that we're talking about food, not that I'm hungry, but I'm already thinking about, am I gonna have a plant-based lunch or not?
Yeah.
Is there any advice that you will give to a busy entrepreneur such as myself that only has about 15 minutes and needs to grab something to eat? One of the things I see a lot in supermarkets is the lack of ready-to-go meals or sandwiches that taste good, as you've mentioned, that has a really good flavor, that's interesting to eat, but also plant-based.
Yeah, and so that's actually the challenge, I guess, that we're trying to address by, I guess, us as a way to showcase the options that are out there, and this is also something that is like quite local, right? Wherever you are or wherever anyone is, you would only travel so far for lunch, right? Either you would walk somewhere, or even if you were to go on one of the different apps out there, right? The only options are the ones that are kind of like close to you, right? And there are very likely a lot of like different options. So I guess our aim and our objective is to highlight the ones that have plant-based, so that you can choose a plant-based option if you want, and hopefully kind of encourage you to do that by giving you discounts and so on. Yeah. So I guess I don't know where you are specifically, but there are. Yeah, I think it's also the education piece, right? Which is part of our app, where we're not only telling our members that, hey, there's these restaurants that are near you that have plant-based options, but also kind of giving them resources around different recipes or different sauces or like different ingredients that can be used in different ways, and also just kind of sharing about the various benefits of choosing plant-based, whether again for the environment, for your health, or because you want to support animal welfare, right? So whatever reason.
Yes, it reminds me of my own personal journey trying to reduce meat consumption. I mean, back in the days, I was 100% carnivore. My plate will be 95% meat, and the 5%, if I have to, maybe potatoes or any vegetable.
Yeah,
And it used to be, yes, one of the jokes with my friend. They come to my house, open the fridge, and says, what are the vegetables? And of course, I've been slowly introducing more vegetables in my life. And once I decided to be vegan for a complete month, and that was one of the hardest months of my life. That was, I think, 5 years ago, and I completely gave up. But one thing that I see today for anyone wanting to transition is a little bit easier. But there's still this gap, as you're talking about this movement or the education piece, where we can go and quickly find out what is the easiest thing that you need to do. Of course, preparation, knowing what you're going to eat. But I think there's just a gap there that hopefully, well, I know that Midfried will really help us for anyone transitioning, whether it is for personal reason, health reason, or the likes.
Yeah. And again, it's kind of going back to the community aspect, right? So when thinking about behavior change, whether you think about it like something to do with like psychology, behavior change is what I imagine that almost all startups are trying to do, right? You're trying to change the behavior of your user, of your customer, or both, right? And one kind of like facet or like tenet to changing behavior is around basically kind of getting others around you to support you, right? And I think that's again, what we're focusing on trying to build.
Yeah, definitely. And I can see myself getting on the app and challenging my sister and to see who will reduce the meat consumption faster.
And then, for us, it's basically either that people want to compete with others, or they want to like collaborate and support, which is or maybe both, right? So I feel like some people are more competitive, some people are more like collaborative in different aspects, right? So we're here to kind of offer different ways, these kind of campaigns, to just get people on that journey and then to stay on that plant-based journey.
Definitely. And so looking back again, when we really focus again on this idea of building a community, based on your experience now, and if you can go back to some of the painful moments when you first started engaging with, especially partners, what were some of the struggles or the challenges that you had to overcome to bring some of the partners to join the movement?
Yeah. So we actually had to go through a pretty major pivot at the beginning of our like exploration of this idea. So our initial kind of like event or like experiment, let's say, was focusing on a like local chef and engaging with people in the area with a like plant-based dish, right? So from that, we kind of had an assumption that perhaps we can kind of like work then with more local chefs. So then we then kind of went out and tried to engage with more chefs. We had people responding to us, and we met with people. They were kind of very excited. But then after talking with them and trying to figure out if there is a solution that we can offer to like local chefs, we also recognize that most local chefs are kind of these like small family owned or single owner restaurants or like businesses where that single owner is usually also the chef, is quite busy with just the operational details of running a business. You have like suppliers, you have to deal with customers, you have to actually then make the actual dish, right? You have to like plan all that, plan all that out, and it is hard and it's like time consuming, right? And especially when we were speaking with chefs last summer, that was during COVID. Again, I mentioned that we are based in Cornwall. Last year for Cornwall, that was probably like one of the busiest times for Cornwall ever. So then they were busy with that. People or their staff were then calling us sick because of COVID. There's like this one chef that I was speaking to where I think almost everyone got COVID at some point during the summer, right? So basically, like that helped us to realize that we still want to somehow support the local restaurants, but then we're trying to find different ways. So then that's how we actually came up with this idea that we have now, where we're still supporting restaurants, but in a way, in let's say the first way is this very low barrier to entry for them to participate, where all they need to do is just to commit to offering a discount if our Me Free members was to show a virtual membership card, right? So getting them, or that was our experiment or our assumption, and then we went back to those same restaurant owners. We said, hey, if or we know that you're busy. We know that we were talking to you about all these other opportunities to support you. But if you were to do this, would you be able to do it, right? And because I guess our value prop then became much simpler for them. That's how we have about 40 partner restaurants with us now.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And that's in the Cornwall area, right?
Cornwall and Devon too.
Devon, yeah. So, I mean, just thinking about my next holiday, I think I know where I'm going.
Yeah. Plus, it is nice here during the summer.
Yeah. Yeah. So another thing, one thing that you pointed out, which I like to even amplify a lot more, especially for many startups out there. There's this understanding that this is my business, this is the thought that I want, and I will stay there. Whereas at the very beginning of your company and throughout, you need to be open to pivoting and really getting as close as possible to what your customers or users are going to be, as Patrick just mentioned, is by running those experiments that you've identified, right? What proposition will work better for them, get them to be engaged in the movement, to be part of growing or co-creating the community without them having to think about one more thing that I have to do. And I quite like that.
Yeah. It's probably then the separation between an idea and an actual solution, right? So a lot of people have ideas.
Yes.
And ideas are great, but ideas are not necessarily a solution to a problem that someone will use that solution or someone will pay for that solution, right? So it's like less about kind of being married to or being attached to your idea, or even the solution, until a point at which you have enough people that are using it, and hopefully them paying for it or some other customer paying for that.
Yeah. What value do you bring through your solution for the idea? Yeah. Otherwise, why are you doing it?
Yeah, exactly.
So far, for anyone who's just come on board, we've really looked at Midfried, what is Midfried, and the vision behind the product that they're creating. We looked at co-creating a community or a movement through your startup, and some of the different stages, and how Patrick has successfully done it, not just from the point of view of the users, the target market, which is the 16 to 24-year-old that would like to transition to a meat-free diet, but also from the point of view of the businesses and the partners. As you've heard, Patrick already has 40, which is amazing. And this is only the beginning. It's only in Devon and Cornwall. And pretty soon, I'm counting the days until it's going to get to Cambridge. So that's going to be very, very exciting. Now, let's look at when we start moving just from the users and the partners, and let's look at the investors. And of course, as I said before, if anyone has a question or has a thought, please do put them in the comments, and we will continue the discussion with Patrick. So when we look at the investments and just going for founding and working on the kind of the business aspects of growing the startups, there's a lot of discussions out there on forums, on Reddit and others, where people who are planning a proposition such as yourself that's good in the world, especially when we start looking at the sustainable goals, some of the startups really they get negative feedback, because the startup world is so much about profits and unicorns and things like that. Is this something that's worried you or is worrying you as well?
Yeah, so I guess personally, I'm not worried about it. I think it's about understanding what you want to do. What impact do you want to make? And I think that would kind of drive you as to whether you have a vision that not only has an impact or a positive impact on the world or on people, but also has the commercial opportunity too, right? Yeah.
So it's about marrying the impact and the commercial potentials. And how did you do that, or how are you doing that?
Yeah. So I think the first I don't know, like approach or like perspective that we have is, I think, especially for startups who want to have this like positive impact, is to separate the challenge that you're trying to address from users or customers. For example, the kind of like global challenge that we are trying to address with Meat Freed is around meat consumption and the impact on the environment, right? So meat production currently takes up about 60% of all greenhouse gases. And that is a huge problem for everyone in the world, right? But that's not a specific problem for a specific user or a specific customer, right? So there are many ways that you can kind of go about addressing this like huge, global challenge. So then it's about kind of taking that, or to first like understand that yes, you have this like global challenge that you're trying to address, right? But then when it comes to at least a commercial business, someone will eventually need to pay for something, right? So then it's about figuring out, because otherwise you are a nonprofit, which is fine, right? So there are nonprofits that are trying to address this global challenge. Their aim is not to generate profit, and that's fine, right? So there are many ways to kind of go about addressing that global challenge and any challenge in the world. But when it comes to then a commercial entity, is to again think about customers or kind of users and customers in our case, and then now that's what I would kind of consider a very standard way of thinking about. You have customers or users who have a pain or a need or an aspiration or something that is not met fully, and then how can your solution meet that, right? So I think that is how I guess we have kind of like reconciled this like huge challenge that we want to help solve in whatever way that we can, but then also recognize that as a business we will need revenue, basically cash, in order to continue to help us to achieve that vision.
And I like the clarity in your answer here. I guess it's something that I've also heard all the way through our chats today. It's really important to be clear on the different users or the players that are part of the community. And as you said, how do we reach the revenue whilst at the same time satisfying the needs of every single users on the journey and doing something good for the world?
Yes. Yeah.
I see a lot of startups that start with an idea that's good for the world, but they slowly move into the nonprofits. As you've said, there's nothing wrong with that, but it all depends on your business model from the beginning and your journey and where you'd like to go. So being very clear on that will be really good, which is another reason why when I met you and I thought, okay, this is really something that I would like to put out there, have a discussion. And every time I bump into a startup that I'm advising and they are in this world of wanting to do good and they are in between, I'm like, well, just speak to Patrick. he will sort you out, or just watch the video.
Yeah.
And again,
by the way, I mean, that like perspective still actually relates to a nonprofit, right? Because if you are a nonprofit, in that case, you have customers, but the customers are probably like grant funders, right? Who have the funds that would then fund your operating expenses in order to continue with your nonprofit vision, right? So either way, right? Like you still need to understand, right? Like who your customer persona is, or in this case, a grant funder persona, I guess. What is their profile? What do they need? What is like lacking, and then how do you then kind of align with that? So I feel like, I mean, to be fair, I have not run a nonprofit, but I have like volunteered with enough to recognize that they have like beneficiaries that they support in some way, but they still need to get funding somehow, and then there's still that like way of thinking about how do you communicate yourself to a potential grant funder, or in our case, to a potential customer.
Yeah. And I am passionate about nonprofit. Again, I also have an extensive experience volunteering. And some of the very good nonprofit organizations that I volunteered for, that I've run, one of the things that was outstanding was how they managed to meet the needs of the businesses that they were working with to get some funding, the volunteers, and also the organization as a whole. So going back to what you just said, it's really about understanding the personas, their needs, and that's the 101 of building any type of business.
Yes.
Now, talking about building businesses in general, you've when we were talking earlier, you've mentioned that your own personal journey goes way beyond meat-free, obviously, and that you've been involved in many early stage startups. So can you share with us a little bit of your experience, what you've seen there, and what led you to go from that's it, I want to start on my own?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I started my career as a management consultant for IBM back in the States, where I'm from. And so like that work was kind of like supporting large corporates to improve their customer experiences. I realized that I wanted to have a bigger impact. So then that's why I then kind of focused on startups. I did my MBA. After that, I worked for a fintech startup, basically kind of providing alternative financing options for small and medium businesses. I kind of progressed to the COO of that startup, and kind of just managing all the operations and supporting the CEO in defining the overall strategy. The startup had to shut down in late 2018. So then at that point, I still wanted to support startups. So then I kind of went out and tried to find other founders to work with. So I think from like 2018 to about 2021, I haven't counted, but I would imagine that I probably worked with like 10 or more startups, either directly with the founder or as part of the leadership team. So I think one of or let's say that there are many challenges, I guess, with creating and building a startup. I think one of them, especially with the startup founders that I was working with, that had just a concept. So they were trying to bring a concept to market. One of the very common challenges is actually what we had talked about before, where people have this idea and they're like really in love with this idea, and some of them kind of like hold it kind of near and dear to their heart. They kind of treat it like a baby, where it's like no one can say anything bad about this idea, right? And that is a very I guess like unfortunate way of trying to build a business, build an actual model that will kind of help that idea grow, right? If there's no feedback that is taken for the idea, then it just either stays that way as an idea, or if you were to share it, or like usually what has happened is that this startup founder has this idea. They then spend a lot of their time, their resources. They may be able to get other people on board to help build this idea, but everything is still kind of like in this silo of their own world, their own bubble of trying to build a solution, like getting it to fit this like vision of theirs, without ever speaking to the potential users or customers or both, right? So I've been in way too many that I care to count and to recall of that, right? So I think that's one common thing, or common challenge that I see. And then the other part, or I guess the other challenge for like startup founders is kind of like building the right team as well, right? So I guess like building a product that no one wants is, I think, one of, or if not the main challenge or reasons why startups fail. And then the second is, I believe, around team, right? So it's like kind of understanding like who do you need at what time, how do you relate to any new people or whoever it is like on that team, and then will that team kind of be your own like internal community to support you in reaching this vision, right? So there have been, again, a lot of stories around not choosing the right team members at the right time, not having that support, and for startup founders is also usually where, again, it's partly a combination of like believing that their solution is like the next big thing, and then not wanting any feedback from that, right? So I think my experiences with founders that have kind of fallen into those two types of like buckets basically led me to just wonder if I could maybe do it better, treat my team better, build a solution that's kind of like more aligned to lean startup. Think about the process, or kind of being let's say like in love with the process and not in love with my solution. And by focusing on the process, by defining what is the quickest way that I can validate or invalidate my assumption, that is what I was trying to instill with many of the founders, and I realized that people weren't hearing me. Maybe I could try that myself, and so this is how it all came about.
Oh, that's so exciting, and I love the just to summarize the two key points. One was really about, well, it's your baby, but at the same time, it needs to grow on its own.
Yeah.
So be open for feedback. And the second one was on the team. Yesterday, I was having a coffee with a startup founder called Elena from Metaspace, and actually interviewed her live. And it was the first time that we had a real physical coffee.
Oh,
It was
nice.
interesting. Yes, finally. Maybe one day, definitely, in London, we'll also grab one. That's for sure. But one of the things that resonates with me as she was talking about the journey of a startup to where they are now, especially when it comes to the team, was exactly what you've said. First, who do you need, especially at the early stages you are building and validating the idea? And secondly, how do you structure yourself, and how is your internal community changing as you bring in more people? I think that there's a lot of teams out there that really underestimate the importance of having a clear onboarding process, however simple it is, even if you're adding one or two members of your team as you're growing. Imagine 2 or 3 people have been working on the product for 3 months, the newbie turn up. How do they feel part of the discussion, the inside jokes and everything? And as you can say, that can make or break the dynamic and the flow of the company as it grows, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. So I hope you have ideas on you've been burned whilst working in other startups. So I'm sure you have ideas on how to do it a bit differently.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that I have kind of been perfect in this journey. I think what I would want to continue doing is just to be kind of like open and honest with myself around what gaps do I need to address, and then to be kind of like open and honest with any new team member that we bring on board, right? For example, we have brought on board new team members where there's no process in place. There's we're kind of like building processes, or maybe not, or I feel like process is a very strong word. Like we were building some method of working that is still very loose, right? Like we're still like defining, we're still trying to like figure it out. But it's more that I want to be open and honest with my team in general, any new team members. And I feel like that is something that is hopefully like resonates more than like trying to impose something that I think I have the best solution, right? Where, usually for a startup team, at this early stage, you are or should be bringing in people that are better than you at something, right?
Yeah.
And then it's about recognizing that, I think, first being honest with yourself that you don't have this skill or this expertise or something. So that's why you need someone to help you with that. And then when you bring on board that person, to treat them with the respect of, hey, I may be an expert in something, but I'm bringing you on because you are an expert in X. So let's work together, as a proper team.
Yeah. And having the humility to actually accept that as a founder as well is actually beautiful to see in yourself.
Yeah.
And in fact, for anyone who's currently watching, thinking about how do you create that experience, especially as a startup's running at 100 miles an hour or so, but it's still yet an important part of looking after your internal community as you are also focused on the external community. I would suggest that you watch the episodes with Darcy Bowles on building the employee experience. A lot of the things that Patrick has mentioned today are things that Darcy also, she went into a lot of details on building employee experience from the moment before they even join your company, whilst they're in your company, and when they're leaving. Because I think it's one of the key ingredients to, creating the best community that you can as a motivated employee. Creating a workplace playground will lead to you working into building a bigger external community.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So, Patrick, thanks very much for today. We're coming to the end of the session, and I'd like to ask you to summarize your startup journey with Midfried in one word, if possible. What would you say?
I would say exciting.
Yeah. That's nice. Exciting. Why exciting?
Yeah. Well, I think for myself, because as I shared that I have been working with many startup founders, kind of like in a role that supports others, and it was because of those experiences that I wanted to try it myself. But because I have never tried it myself, I was unsure about it, and I feel like coming into this experience, understanding how lean startup could actually work and could actually help, following that method, think about things as experiments, wanting to like validate, and for us at least, being able to receive positive like validation from our members, from our like partner businesses, and that's kind of like gaining traction by itself almost. That is very exciting, just to kind of see something built out of nothing, I guess.
Yes, it's like giving birth to an idea, whilst at the same time letting it grow, right?
Right.
So for any of our followers that are really interested, not just about following you and your story, but to follow Midfried and to join the movement, how can they do that?
Yeah. So they can just go on our website, meetfried.com, meetfried with a D. .com. There should be a register button on the far right. So right now the incentives that we offer are kind of like based in Cornwall and Devon. But if you were to register, then that's also an indication for us to maybe we should go to wherever you are in whatever city.
Brilliant. So you've heard it from Patrick himself. Do join and sign up to Midfried, and before you know it, the movement will start where you are. And if not, I'm sure Midfried is sharing a lot of content out there that will help you transition on your journey until they eventually land in your town. So I will definitely say just watch out for that. Thanks, Patrick and the team at Midfried, for being so passionate about what you're doing to help our community. And again, for all of the great advice that you've shared in terms of building a community, not just for the users, but also for businesses, and also about looking at how to merge passion, impact, and profits in a sustainable way. For anyone who has any question, as I've said before, please do feel free to comment. We always look and monitor our social media and answer live, or we'll get in touch with you directly. In the meantime, let's design a happy and productive workplace playground together.